Welcome to the Up Arrow Podcast with William Harris, featuring top business leaders sharing strategies and resources to get to the next level. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hey everyone, I'm William Harris. I'm the founder and CEO of Element and the host of the Up Arrow Podcast, where I feature the best minds in e-commerce to help you scale from 10 million to 100 million and beyond as you up arrow your business and your personal life. Growing a business has a funny way of lying to you. At first, it tells you everything is working. Revenue is up. The team is growing. The calendar is full. Then one day you look around and realize the room got quieter. Fewer friendships, fewer real conversations, fewer people who know you outside of your title. So many of the guests that I've interviewed have experienced this. Heck, I've experienced this too. Today's guest, Nick Gray, is no exception. He's built and sold multiple million-dollar businesses and also felt the struggle with adult friendships. Nick went on to write The 2-Hour Cocktail Party, a book that isn't really about parties at all, but really about how relationships are built when you stop leaving them to chance. If your business is growing, but your world feels smaller, this episode is for you. Nick, welcome to the Up Arrow Podcast.
What a nice intro. I'm excited to talk about this. All right, that's cool.
Yeah, and here's the book too, by the way, so you guys can see it. I have read it. I've enjoyed it very much. A couple people on my team have heard me talking about preparing for this podcast, and they've also bought it and read this book as well. So you're having an impact even at Element as a whole.
It's a really quirky book. You know, it has a title, The 2-Hour Cocktail Party. Mm-hmm. The funny thing is I don't even drink alcohol.
Sure.
But I use that phrase cocktail party because it represents this idea of a lightweight social gathering that's so easy to gather for. Mm-hmm. And I was tired of hearing people say, oh, you should host a dinner party. And I just found as an entrepreneur, as a very busy business owner, dinner parties for me were not the right fit. I'll talk more about that later if you're curious, but cocktail parties just symbolizes what could be a meetup or just a happy hour, just a get together.
Yeah, the nuance of that word. I have one interruption, then we're going to get right into the good stuff. This episode is brought to you by Element. Element is an award-winning advertising agency optimizing e-commerce campaigns around profit. In fact, we've helped 13 of our customers get acquired, with the largest one selling for nearly $800 million and one that IPO'd. You can learn more on our website at element.com, which is spelled ELUMYNT.com. Okay, I wanted to go back to where I found you. I first found you on X. You're mentioned in a few of my friends' posts, Sujan Patel. I had Neville Medhora on the show. And I got caught in some kind of stunt that you pulled about flying a stranger to Japan or something like this. And I started following you and I read your book and I was like, I got to talk to this guy. What was going on with this stunt, this random stranger flight thing that was going on here?
Dude, it was such an amazing time of my life. They say on the internet that you hope that you never become the main character on Twitter. And I was the main character.
You were.
For a few days, I was the main character. That whole stunt had over 26 million impressions.
Wow.
And I had thousands of people who applied to want to go on a blind date where we met up in Tokyo. And it happened because I was just bored at home one night. I was single at the time. And I was like, hey, I just want to go on a date. I want to go back to Tokyo. I want to see if I can do it as a blind date. I literally didn't think more than that. I just let the tweet rip before I went to bed. You know, this was one of those moments, I have to say, I'm thinking about it now for the first time, where I didn't think too much and I kind of just did it. And that changed my life. And there are moments where those things can happen. But yeah, I had an experience where I had gone, a little bit of backstory. I had spent some time in Japan a year or two ago. And it was honestly a very beautiful experience, but lonely. I found the culture very isolating. I don't speak the language. And I just kind of found myself being alone a lot of the time. And I left saying, I would love to go back to Japan, but not by myself. Fast forward about a year and a half, and I knew I had to go. I was doing a speaking gig out at Yelp in San Francisco. So I was kind of halfway there. It's easy to get to Japan from there. And I was like, screw it, dude. Let me just share this out. Hey, does anyone want to meet me over there? And I posted it and I went to bed. It sounds like the common story. I woke up the next day and it had gone viral. And I was like, oh, there's something big happening here. And it all kind of ripped from there.
I've actually been trying to do a little bit more of that myself, of just not thinking as much. I have a habit sometimes. People will tease me when I decided to get new jeans. I don't even remember how long ago, 5 years ago. It was like the styles were changing, and I was like, so I can't just go get like the same jean. That I gotta decide what I'm getting. So it's like a spreadsheet for deciding which jeans I was going to get. And this is the epitome of overthinking what should be a simple thing. But I started doing now more over this past year. Just like I'm not gonna overthink this. Just do it. What's your gut say? Just go for it. Reminds me of that movie, Yes Man with Jim Carrey. Is this something though that you do more often now as a result of it? You're like, hey, that worked out pretty well. I should do more things without thinking. Or are you like, no, I still really like to overthink? Or you're like, no.
I guess you're talking to a guy who reads every single product review for a new tech gadget. I moved into a new house about a year ago. And like for 3 days of my life, I was obsessed with washer dryer reviews. Sure. And I knew every Samsung, whatever model. Did that really matter in the washer dryer that I chose ultimately? No strong thoughts about it, except to say that I think now that I've gotten married, I've moved into a house with my wife. I think I'm in a different season or phase of my life, which is a little sad on one hand, because I wish I could be here and tell all the business owners and entrepreneurs listening, like, you should do, like, don't think, just do it. Sure. But the reality is, like, when you have a company, you have employees who count on you, people whose paychecks depend on your business. And so I think you have to hold that in different sandboxes of when you can and when it is appropriate to do that.
Yeah, that's fair. I want to jump into the book a little bit. So the book is called The 2-Hour Cocktail Party. What problem were you solving in your own life when you wrote this?
I just wanted to make more friends. I poured my heart and soul every minute into my business for so long. And I realized that I wanted to have friends, that I had moved to a city. I lived at the time in New York City, and I wanted to have friends outside of my buddies I knew from college. I wanted to build my own friend groups. And I started to try to go to meetups or networking events and just wasn't successful. I mean, they were oftentimes held in loud bars where, the most extroverted, confident people do well at those events. But that wasn't me. And I would leave those meetups feeling like it was my fault that I didn't meet people. And honestly, I honestly felt like a loser. Like I was like, God, like I just, that's not, like I don't have it in me. And I realized after some thinking that it wasn't me that was the problem, it was the event. And that I could create a better event format or style that catered to people maybe who were less extroverted or maybe who didn't know everybody already. This format, by the way, that my book talks about wouldn't be appropriate to run for like a group that's been hanging out for 20 years together, right? You're not going to use this at a family reunion and run name tags where like everybody's name, right? But the groups that I like the best are groups and events where I get to meet new people. And so that's really what these events are designed for, is to help you meet new people. And then the specific tactical thing of when I used it was I'd been doing this for so long in New York, but I left New York in 2020 and I moved here to Austin, Texas. And within 3 months, I had a really good group of friends and a really good circle just because I knew what the playbook was and I knew how to do it. By the way, this isn't just for friends. We can talk about that. You can use this in your business for finding new employees, new business partners, new customers and clients. The idea of keeping those weak connections and loose ties warm is really helpful.
I hadn't even actually considered that aspect of it, going beyond the personal side. 'Cause I really do resonate so much with the personal side. Again, building businesses, and so many people have been on here talking about that same thing. I actually went to...
Where do you live, by the way? What city are you in?
Minnesota, Stillwater, Minnesota. So we're about half an hour outside the Twin Cities.
Nice.
Yeah. So I was at a book launch last night. Similar thing. It's loud. And I'm just trying to inject myself into a conversation. And I did, right? Like I walked over to a couple of guys, looked like they were laughing. And I was like, just jumping in and say hi, you're laughing, sounds like you're having a good time. And the guy literally was like, you got 10 seconds to tell me why you've interrupted our conversation. Right? Like, and so you're just like, because, and then it's like, I don't know. I don't even remember what I said, but to your point, it is difficult to make more meaningful conversation. It was loud. It was good. It was fun. And I had a good time, but I don't know if I'm going to walk away saying that any of these people now I feel really that connected to.
Dude, and that's the thing. It was a missed opportunity by the host. This happened to me about three months ago. I went to a friend's wedding, and it's a guy who I know a little bit well, but not super well. But he's a very interesting character. And I went to his wedding, and I'm not saying you need to do this at your wedding because that's like such a private thing, but I didn't talk to anybody new. Like, I talked to the people at our dinner table, but there were so many other people there. And, you know, I was there with my wife. It's like not the situation where you want to walk up and schmooze at other tables. Be like, so who are you and what's your story?
Sure.
And I just left with the experience, like, what a missed opportunity for us to have met some other people. And I think at the event that you went to last night, book launch, all these interesting people who have a lot to share. What a missed opportunity. Hey, one pro tip I'll tell you. For joining conversations, something that I've found, the two most powerful words that you can do when you join a conversation are to simply join and just say, please continue. And the idea for that is that you will wait for a natural point in a break in the conversation for them to work you in. I went to an event last week and I noticed that so many people were arriving at staggered times. Every time a new person would come, it'd break the conversation. Everybody would have to introduce them. Versus if you just said, if people who are joining at that event just said, oh, please continue, then maybe it's easier to work those people into the convo.
That's brilliant. I will 100% use that again. For a lot of our audience, e-commerce founders, they're scaling fast. Many of them are going to say, I'm just too busy for friendships. I'm too busy for relationships. I'm focused on growth. What are you seeing as the hidden cost of neglecting relationships when you're scaling a business?
Here's the thing. As a business owner, you have a very large network of what I call loose connections or weak ties. These are potential customers who maybe worked through the sales funnel, but ultimately didn't sign up with you. They are potential employees that you did interview rounds with, but for one reason or another, it wasn't a good fit at the time. They are channel partners. There's other things, these people that you have out there who could be an asset or you could be an asset to them, but life is busy and you don't really stay in touch with them enough. Maybe they see your socials, maybe they don't. I have found that when you host something like this, a little happy hour once a quarter, it is an insane way to grow that network of loose connections or weak ties, simply to help keep you and your business top of mind. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be complicated. It simply expands your surface area so that people keep you in mind when it comes time for you to hire or look for new customers or whatever. You have had a touch point with them.
It reminds me of a quote that I really appreciate by Josh McDowell. Rules without relationship leads to rebellion. And so this idea for a lot of the people on our team is making sure that we get them together because that creates those relationships. And then it's a lot easier to somebody assigns a task to you in Asana, and it's not like just one more task in Asana. It's like, oh, okay, great. No, this is Kelly. Like, I love Kelly. Kelly's so fun. Like, of course I'm happy to do this. But to your point, it's like if you're doing this now with these loose connections, sometimes it's all it ends up being, but there's more of a relationship there. And so if there is some type of a thing that you're trying to do or trying to accomplish, they're excited to be a part of whatever it is you're doing.
What a neat quote. Rules without relationships lead to rebellion. I think that you must use that within your team, but because if you're like, hey, you have to clock in at this time, or hey, whenever you do a meeting request, you have to do this. It just feels like so top down, and people don't understand it. How do you do that within your team? Do you guys do icebreakers, or like every Monday you go around and like, hey, share one thing that you did this weekend? We
are an entirely remote team. We were that way from the very beginning of the business. This wasn't like a pandemic thing. We started it that way. It was because of the book Remote by Jason Fried, 37 Signals, right? So we do have a daily stand-up 15 minutes, which is not really business focused at all. It is just getting to know each other. Every single person on the team has a turn at the wheel where they run the question of the week, and they get to be the one who's interviewing, talking to people and getting to know people. I think that just helps them to develop like that leadership ability and things like that. But it's just silly questions that we ask people. We try to do at least every other week. We're doing team lunches where we're getting everybody together and we're just, goofing off, having a good time, things like that. And then flying everybody in person. There's something that I still feel like about the in-person aspect is we try to fly everybody in at least once a time. I just think that what I say is it's like, you need to sweat together. You need to do something. It's like, we're doing some like climbing or something where it's like, we just got to get out there and move around together a little bit.
Yeah. That's cool that you bring everybody in. It's not cheap to do that,
not.
But oh my God, is it helpful? It's so nice. I have some folks that I work with and they live very far away from me, and I've tried to go visit them. And whenever I do it, I'm like, God, we should do this more often. Like, I don't know about you, but I always say that when we do it.
Always. I want to jump into some of the philosophy, backstory, stuff like that. In the book, you say that hosting is a skill you can learn. Many business founders assume they're not people persons or that networking is an awkward chore. How do you get someone like that to shift their identity from I don't host to I am the connector?
Let me think about that. I think that, it is hard to think. Many people think, oh, I'm not the host, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, I didn't grow up with the hosting skill set. Like, I'm not a host. And for one reason or another, maybe their parents didn't host, maybe they weren't social or they weren't sort of extroverted. I think what's different about my book is that it was written for and designed for people who are not hosts. And by the way, I'm not trying to gatekeep the stuff in my book. I will tell you and your listeners everything that they need to know. If they're too busy to read it, I'll tell you all the stuff inside of it. But that really was my goal, was to take someone from 0 to 1, from someone who never hosts to someone who says, hey, this is a skill. This is something that I can actually do and work on. And just like anything else, I can get to be good at it. Mm-hmm. That's what I found, and that's what changed my life.
Yeah, and maybe that's a good place to go here next. Not gatekeeping, right? Like, I want people to go read the book because I think that, there's this many pages for a reason, and it actually really helps to kind of walk you through the process. But like, short synopsis of like what the 2-hour cocktail party is.
Short synopsis is it's a step-by-step guide. It's a hidden handbook of how to host a 2-hour meetup or happy hour. That is from soup to nuts. Everything from who to invite, what messages to text them, how to get them to commit an RSVP. A lot of the book, honestly, is things to prohibit the number one fear of a new guest. And if you had to guess, what do you think is the number one fear for a new guest?
I had to guess the number one fear. Maybe that people wouldn't show up?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
The number one fear for a new guest is that nobody's going to show up.
Sure.
And so much of my book is really designed around how do we make sure that that doesn't happen? And some of that is in your first 5 invites. You say, hey, William, I'm thinking about hosting a happy hour on this date and time. If I do it, would you come? Mm-hmm. And that helps you get that early core group who says yes, and you lock them in. And then you widen your invite circle and you widen it some more. It's not doing what most people do. Most people do what I call the spray and pray method. Mm-hmm. They spray out some invites and they pray that people will show up. And I've never been successful with that. And for a first-time host, I don't think it's the right way.
I have actually never seen that before reading this book. And I will say that I liked it so much. I have a 15-year-old daughter, 12-year-old daughter, 10-year-old daughter. And as you can imagine, a 50-year-old girl, trying to plan a party, having people over for whatever, that is like her biggest fear. It's like, but what if nobody comes? And and I've actually taken her through this. I haven't gotten her to read it, but I've taken her through parts of it. I'm just like, okay, well, who's the core? Who are the 4 or 5 people that you're like, if I ask them, they're very likely going to say yes to anything that you ask them to do. And so it's like, okay, let's just see what day they're available first. Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. Now we go from there. They're available this time. Now you can ask the other people. And when I read that, I was like, I've never seen that because I'm the typical extrovert who I'm like, I'm going to invite every single person I know. I'm just like, who wants to come over and play poker tonight or whatever, right? And it's a different, I liked this approach.
Yeah. I think that method of the spray and pray can work if you have a very established social network with a lot of close friends and you're a comfortable host. And if it's the type of event that only a handful showing up still works. So poker, watching a football game, those are good examples of that. What I have found, and this is something else that's unique, is that to host a happy hour, more people is actually less work. And what I mean by that, the ideal number I've found is about 15 to 22, which might sound like a lot if you don't really know. But I'll tell you why. 15 people is enough that when you come into the room or when you look around, there's not enough people for you to talk to every single person. There is that feeling of like, oh, there's a lot of people here. And so I say that 15 really is the minimum. If you have less than 15, let's say you have 10, you as the host kind of have to do a lot more managing and babysitting. Sometimes it forms into one circle. Sometimes people are tired of talking to other people. You just have to host a lot more. Now, why is 22 the maximum? For a new host, 22 is about the most that you can manage to run, for example, a round of introductions or just to keep it slightly manageable. I've tested this. I've hosted hundreds of happy hours and events, and I've taught almost 1,000 people now how to host their verified first party ever. And 22 is really a sort of an upper limit for your first time, just like riding a bicycle, just to keep you kind of comfortable.
I like that. I like that you've narrowed it down to 22. I mean, this is, it's such a random number. It's not like 15 to 20, let's round it off or whatever. It's 22.
Yeah. It's very well dialed in.
You also argue that a 2-hour time-bound event is the sweet spot. Why exactly 2 hours? And why a cocktail party format rather than dinner networking event? You kind of ankled at this a little bit in the intro.
I have found that a dinner party tends to be logistically complicated for new hosts. There's dietary restrictions, there's food. Here's the thing. A lot of people will hear dinner party and they'll think, oh, I got to focus on the food. What I think is the food should be your last concern. I want you to focus on the relationships and the conversations and the connections. The food can figure itself out. When people do a dinner party, they tend to focus too much on the food. You really can't have less than, let's see, for a dinner party, you really want to have minimum 4, really maximum 6. Sure. There's a woman whose name is Priya Parker, and she wrote a book called The Art of Gathering. And Priya says that when you have 8 or more people at a dinner table, the conversation splits into multiple sub-conversations, which at a cocktail party is what you want, but at a dinner party, you kind of want to keep it as a single conversation thread at one table. So anyhow, dinners, I found that in a busy city like New York, maybe up near you by the Twin Cities with bad weather, if you have 1 or 2 cancellations, it just ruined my dinner. And it really threw off the whole vibe of what I was trying to do. Versus a cocktail party, I could invite a few more people. 1 or 2 cancellations wasn't going to break me. And it was just a lot easier for me to set up and clean up afterwards.
That's a good point. I did do a dinner in LA one time that did not go the way I wanted it to, where because of traffic, we have traffic here, but not like LA traffic. And I just remember being there where it's like, I think there was 3 or 4 cancellations where people were just like, I'm stuck in traffic. It keeps updating saying, it's now like 4 hours till I can get there. And so I think there was 3 of us that ended up being there then at the dinner by the time it was all said and done. So to your point, I see where you're going with that. It's like, 1, 2 cancellations. It's like, it's now a very different event.
It really does change. Look, you can host a dinner party, you can graduate to a dinner party, but here's what I found. If you're a busy entrepreneur, you're listening to this podcast, you're like, God, how could I possibly have time to do this? I have found that the people that are most successful with hosting, the people that get more clients, better employees, more partnerships, have more friendships, those people who truly create relationships learn how to make hosting a habit. And if I want to give you a formula that's repeatable, that you don't hate yourself the day afterwards, let's think about that. What if I give you this elaborate party formula and it takes everything out of you and you're up till 2 a.m. and the next day you wake up and it's like your house is messy? You're never going to want to do that again. I found that this 2-hour window allowed me to get 80 or 90% of the benefit, but in a way that I could do it quarterly and regularly, and it didn't take away from all my other duties.
I like that. You talked about weak ties, and that's like a phrase that you've used a couple times already, and I appreciate that you mentioned it in the book as well. The power of bringing people together who don't already know each other. For a business owner, what's the ROI of weak ties versus strong ties, and how do you convince someone who only wants their A-list to open up the circle?
I think that in order to get to the A-list, you have to build your weak ties.
Sure.
Let me think about how to tell this story. I just returned, I worked an event last week that, I can't say any names, but to put it in context, of the 25 attendees, 13 of them flew their private jets there.
Wow.
So this was a group where, like, by far, I was the least wealthy, least successful of that whole group. And I put in the work in order to get there of hosting tons of other meetups, of working different connections. The way, in fact, that I got there was by befriending sort of an assistant to one of the guys who was attending. I didn't think about this strategically. I wasn't like, oh, to get there. It's like, no, I was just building my network of people. The other big thing I think I want to say is if you listen to this pod and you're like, oh, I'm ready to host, I'm going to pull from the top shelf immediately and invite my A-list. What I would say is start with easy. Like, get this format down so you become a good host. Because the last thing I want is for you to invite this top 3 ideal customer profile person or person you really want to be best friends with. And then it comes time to host and you're nervous and you're frazzled and it doesn't go the way that you want. I am speaking to you as a very practical host who has hosted and taught hundreds of people how to host. This is like hard-earned advice that is hard to hear, but is helpful to think about this like a marathon and not like a sprint of only hosting one party.
It's so good because everything you do, you get better at by doing repetitions. I look back, this is episode, I think, 141. I look back to episode 1 and I did rewatch some of these a little bit ago. It's like, wow, I was really bad at this. Now maybe I'm still not that good, but I would at least say that it's like I've come a long way from that first one, and I can only imagine that you do get better at hosting, and now you have an opportunity to really walk away with that guest feeling truly as if you know what you're doing. They felt cherished, they felt loved and appreciated, and it felt like this was a really good event.
What things for you have you in your craft of interviewing and doing all these episodes? What stuff do you notice when you watch the earlier ones? Or I guess I'm just trying to look like, what are those golden nuggets for you that have been hard earned?
I would say some of my interactions, maybe just in general. I feel like I'm a little bit better at pausing and listening to what you have to say versus like, this is my agenda and I have to follow up with the exact next thing where it's like, hey, you went there, and I'm just like, I'm going to skip ahead here then. This is great. Let's just move to that then. I feel like I can flow a little bit better with what the conversation is. Probably the easiest thing that I'd say is the biggest change.
Is flowing because you maybe, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but maybe you have the confidence to know that it's still going to land and it's still going to work out, and that there's beauty in the naturalness of it.
I think that's fair to say. I think it's fair to say that sometimes you can be pleasantly surprised by what happens, even if it completely goes off script. And you're like, we didn't actually talk about any of the things that I had on the list, but the conversation was just real conversation, genuine curiosity, and that made it maybe even better. And I think people appreciate that even more.
One of the new questions I like to ask, kind of as an icebreaker or something at the events I host, is what are you nerding out about right now? Or a variant of that is like, like what do you really want to talk about now? And I think that's so helpful because even in this room that I was in of billionaires, one guy was very passionate about why you should only drink water from glass bottles, right? Like that's a niche thing. He didn't want to talk about his publicly traded firm or all the stuff you knew from his past life. He wanted to talk about this water stuff. And like, sometimes you got to meet people where they are in order to build a relationship.
That's so good. And that is actually why I end every episode with that section of like, who is blank? Because of that exact reason, I'm like, I want to know the things that you want to talk about that have nothing to do with the rest of this episode, nothing to do with business. It's just like, what are you specific as the human being interested in? Which I have a couple of things that you and I might talk about here later. I like that you got this idea of, okay, so weak ties, and you're trying this idea of people that we want to employ or something like that. We are all remote. How do you, is there a way to do this in a remote environment, or is it like, no, it just breaks down in a remote way?
You know, I have a lot of respect, but also sympathy for those who are running remote teams. A lot of people have asked me, hey, how does your format apply to Zoom meetings or to stuff? And it's so hard. I think there's people out there that are more skilled than I am. I've tried it. I've tried to tell people, okay, you got to have breakout rooms. You need to have everybody with the mic on. You can't let people mute. You are probably much more experienced. I tend to focus in the domain that I'm good at, and that's real life, in-person meetups that are 15 to 22 people. I'm kind of dialed in on that.
Yeah, that's fair. You mentioned, let's go back to the in-person ones then. You mentioned simple scripts and checklists for invitees, the flow of the event. Can you share a sample invite script or part of one that you've seen work especially well?
Would this be used, set me up and just give me a little context. When do you want it to be used? What's the gathering? And then I'll give you a great one.
So let's say that I am just wanting to get to know people. This is not business related. This is exactly like what you just said. I've been busy. I've been, for me personally, there was a period of time where I went to bed at like 4 a.m. and I was up at 7 a.m. And so it was like, there was no time. And so you're just like, okay, we got to start meeting people. I am married, right? So it'd be like me and my wife trying to do something, get together with some other couples. And maybe we're saying we've got kids. So we're saying this is probably going to be maybe on a Friday night or something like that. We're going to make sure that the kids are taken care of somewhere else. And most of the people that we're probably going to be working with probably have kids too.
And what's the name of the town you live in?
Stillwater.
So at an event like this, if it was you and your wife that was hosting it, first, I want to note that I think about these rounds of introductions. Some people call them icebreakers, but I find that word is such a knee-jerk negative reaction these days, especially in a personal setting. So I say rounds of intros. Let's just think about why we do those rounds of intros first. So I just want to set the table with the why so your listeners know the importance of it. Hopefully, at your happy hour, you are bringing together people who do not all know each other. Okay. And so at a baseline, I want you to use name tags. I want you to do first names only, because that symbolizes and shows people that this is a safe space. It's not like a party of cliques where everybody knows each other. It's an okay place to go up and say hi to somebody new. Okay. But why do we do those intros? You do those intros because, number one, it helps create new conversations. Number two, when you run the intros, it actually helps people end the existing conversations they were having. Many people are very good at starting new conversations, but socially they're not good at sort of ending those conversations. They stay in them much too long. And number three is we do those because it kind of gives everybody in the room a chance to do a roll call, to say where they are, who they are, to give you an idea of like, oh, I really want to talk to that person before I leave. And so I think about scaffolding these rounds of intros when I'm at an event. One example of scaffolding would be, hey, let's start with a green level that's easy as possible, that doesn't cause people to get trapped up in their head. And so an example of a green level would be, hey, what's up, everybody? Since there's a lot of new people here, let's do a quick round of intros. And what I want you to do is say your name, say what you do for work or kind of what you're working on. If you don't want to talk about work, you don't have to. But then also, please share with me one thing that you like to have for breakfast. What's one of your favorite things that you like to have for breakfast? And now as you're listening to this, you might think like, what are we in 5th grade? Like that is such a simple childish intro. But that question, what's one of your favorite things you like to have for breakfast, doesn't cause people to lock up.
Yeah.
A bad example is something that's a brain teaser. What's your worst first date that you ever went on? What's your favorite movie?
I
Right?
hate anything that's absolute like that, like your best, your worst, because I'm like, I'm pedantic enough where I'm just like, well, that was a bad one. I don't know if that's my worst. Now I really got to think through every single bad situation in my entire life to see, is that my worst one?
Yeah, and we never want to lead with a what's your worst or something like that. One fun fact, a way to change that if you really want to ask people would be to say, what is one of your favorite books?
Yes, I like that.
Or what is one good book that you've read this year? It doesn't make it definitive and subjective, which elicits judgment from others. So anyhow, we say that. We say, what's one of your favorite things to eat for breakfast? Because it just expresses a little bit about people's personality, and it just gets them to chat and to talk and to voice a little bit. So we'd use that at the very beginning. But then at the end of the event, I want you to do something I call a value additive icebreaker. And that's where everybody's answer adds value to the rest of the room. And so for you in Stillwater, what I would say is, hey, for this last round of intros, I'd tell them this 5 minutes before I do it so they can think for a second. But I would say, hey, share with me your best life pro tip or life hack here in Stillwater. And that could be, what's the best coffee shop you found? The best dog park? The best gym, the best small business. What's a cool small business here in Stillwater that you like to support? What's something cool here in town that you want to shine a light on? And so what happens is when you do a value additive icebreaker towards the end of your party, it leaves people with this memory of like, oh my God, I met so many cool people. I got all these new ideas. And they're like, wow, that was a really cool happy hour. And you've immediately raised the bar for what a casual social meetup is, and you are seen as a good host. And so these are like little tricks. It's not rocket science, but it's little tricks that anyone can do to be seen as a good host.
I love that idea. I love how you bring it back into, the actual location that you are in. I think that's very interesting. You brought up leaving the conversation then. When you're leaving the conversation as one aspect of it, but let's just even say, okay, you hosted these people, you're trying to create all of these weak ties or these more connections. How do you handle this idea of maybe somebody's like, well, why didn't you invite me to the next one? You had another party and I didn't come to that one, right? Or like, how do you get around this idea of it's like, hey, we're not BFFs. We're just trying to connect and create opportunities and things like that.
Something that I tell people is if you're really worried about that is to use this phrase when you host your party. Say, hey, I'm starting to host these parties once a quarter. There's new people every time. So that's one way. So use that phrase, there's new people every time. And people understand, okay, it's not the same group. And to tell them your why. Your why is like, look, I've just met so many interesting people here in Stillwater. Like, I want you guys all to meet each other. And so I'm going to host these once a quarter. There'll be new people every time. I'm going to mix the group up. But I really want you all to meet each other. The second thing that you can do if somebody really feels offended that they didn't get invited would be to schedule not just your next party in advance, but your next 2 parties. And so then you could invite someone to maybe the second party afterwards. They don't get invited to the next one, but they do get invited to the one after. This, by the way, is a very big pro tip. When you start to reach from the top shelf to go after those people you really want to connect with, you now have 2 opportunities, 2 dates to give them, because the reality is a lot of people are busy. They might want to come and they're open to it, but they're just busy that night. And so now you get to say to them, hey, I'm hosting these things once a quarter. Here's the next 2 dates. Would love to have you sometime. Can I send you the info?
Is there benefit or is it counterproductive to have wildly different people at these events where you mentioned, this one, it's like 13 of them have their own private jets, right? Is there, benefit to having, it's like a party where it's like one person has a private jet, the other person just graduated college, another person is retired, like benefits, pros, cons?
Huge benefits to that. I think that diversity in attendees, and when I say diversity, I don't mean like racial diversity. I mean in occupation, in age, in profession. I want you to be inviting people from different buckets in your life. So you may have a bucket that's your clients. You may have a bucket that's your kids' parents. You may have a bucket that's your neighbors, and maybe you like rock climbing. So you have a bunch of rock climbing friends. I want you to invite people from each of those groups And I tell you, I hear from so many people, I cannot believe that such and such got along together. I promise you, you are the common thread. You have a good choice and screening of people. Your friends will connect in ways that you can't imagine.
That's a really good point. What about the environment? Like, are you doing this at your home? Is it better to do this somewhere else? And if it is at your home, I'm just going to throw my wife under the bus here. It could never be clean enough. Like, it doesn't matter how clean we have made it. It is still not clean enough to have people over. And so how do you get over those pieces of it?
Controversial hot take of mine is that this kind of has to be hosted at your house.
Okay.
Now, I do have a solution if your house is absolutely not possible, but of the hundreds of people I've talked to, 98% of them, the best place to host is their house. And I'll tell you why. When you host at your house, you turbocharge the relationships with people. What that means is when you invite someone into your home, it is so vulnerable, and yet it snaps you out of a networking, transactional relationship. Like, wow, like I'm invited to your house. I mean, this is not like a business networking event. I'm coming to your house. You also get to be generous. It's not expensive to serve everybody drinks and light snacks. You get to serve them. You get to welcome them. You get to bring them into this space that you control and that you design to an extent. Now, that's your question. What do you do because the house is never clean enough? There's a woman when I was first launching my book who lived in New Jersey, and she kind of marketed herself online as this turbo successful, mommy millionaire type. But the reality is, for one reason or another, her house was being renovated or they were between houses. The story is that they lived in an apartment complex and she had a 2 or 3 bedroom house and her kids were in there and her husband, and she just didn't want to host at home. She thought somebody's going to walk in and judge her. And so her first event, she hosted at a restaurant. It was not a perfect event. It was too loud. It got messed up with all the bills. They were seated. I talked to her afterwards and she built up the confidence to actually try hosting at her home. And what I told her, I said, Nancy, nobody's going to walk into your house, look around, and leave to immediately start a rival happy hour. They're not going to do that. Like, I promise you. And sure enough, she said once she was able to overcome that fear, people loved it. They were so happy to come to her house. Fast forward 6 months later, she hosts these wine Wednesday nights with all these women. When she goes to the grocery store, to PTA meetings, she gets recognized in town now. Like, just because she was able to get over that fear. And the reality is nobody cares how clean your house is. Nobody cares that you've put all the junk into the guest bedroom. They just want to come over and connect. And they're going to be thankful that you were willing to invite them into your home.
Yeah, I think there's something special about actually being in that personal space. Like you said, it almost creates more of that connection.
It really does. I mean, the stats show. I mean, I know this. I don't have like official stuff. My backup option, if people are like, absolutely. So let's take, for you, for an example, you're in Stillwater and you're like, you know what? All my business clients are actually in the Twin Cities. I want to build relationships in the Twin Cities. Having them come all the way out here doesn't make sense for where I'm trying to go towards. My backup option that I tell people is, fine, if you absolutely cannot host this at your home, then the place I would do it is in a hotel lobby. Hotel lobbies, especially on Tuesday and Wednesday nights, are designed for these types of things. They're transient. There's new people every time. They're usually large, somewhat beautiful spaces if you pick a nice hotel bar. And hotel lobby bars are a nice place that you also could gather.
It's a great idea. How about connecting after the party? Are people tapping scanning their LinkedIn barcode? Are you, passing out like cards? Like, that feels disingenuous, especially if it's really not like a networking, but you're just trying to get to know somebody. But you're like, had a great conversation with this person. I remember their first name, don't remember their last name, have no way of looking them up. How do you make sure that you can continue on after that?
I have a secret weapon that I'm going to tell you about how to connect afterwards with people. But I'm going to tell you that after the break, because I'm going to go use the bathroom. Maybe you can do sort of like a commercial break for your company. And by the time you're done, I'll be back in like 30 seconds.
We'll put on elevator music. You're good. I forget actually what the question was that I asked you.
The question was, how do you connect afterwards?
Oh,
with
yes.
these people,
Yes.
right?
So you're going to share this. Okay.
So is your question, how do the guests connect with each other?
Yes, because
or how does the
I've,
host?
I've got your information as the host, right? Like, how do the guests who enjoyed each other, how do they also connect?
Okay, so a lot of people say, oh, should I create a WhatsApp group? Should I do something? Generally, I don't like that. For a simple 2-hour cocktail party, there's no need to do this. But here is my secret weapon. And I got to be honest, of all the podcasts I've been on, I think I've maybe shared this once. Yes. But it's called the 24-hour reply all thread. Now, this is a very advanced move. You should not do this the first time you host, but I will tell you what the future looks like when you're ready for this move. And what I will do is I will set it up at the event. And I will say, hey, everybody, so many amazing connections here. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to send an email out with everybody on the CC. If you don't want to be included, then just let me know before you leave or follow up afterwards. But I'm going to put everybody on an email thread. And for 24 hours only, I want you to reply to that thread with your social media link, with a charity that you like, anything that you want to plug. Are you doing something fun this weekend? Throw it out there. And for 24 hours only, you can reply back. Now, after 24 hours, please don't write back. We don't want to blow up people's inboxes. But for 24 hours only. And this thing just comes alive. People start to write back. They make plans for the weekend. They send their social media links. It's a really cool way. But I'll tell you what. Here's why not to do this if you haven't practiced it. Because if you do not set it up and tell people about it and you just spontaneously surprise them with an email thread, it doesn't get the traction and the momentum necessary. And so even me as an experienced host, I get a little stressed when I do it. And I have to tell people, hey, tomorrow morning I'm going to send this. Can you help me out and reply back? Just because I need 4 or 5 replies to build up the momentum so everybody feels that they need to write back.
Yeah, your core again. You're just always going back to that, you need that seeding stuff. I mean, we do this in advertising, we do this in gifting within influencers. There's always you need that little bit of that seed to kind of get things started.
That's cool that you guys do this with gifting. So your business helps people learn how to do gifting to influencers?
No, I should clarify. We, as in the industry, I don't do that, but I do know companies that do a lot of influencer gifting, right? Where it's they're sending things out to influencers, not even necessarily asking them to rep the product or anything, but it's hey, we sent it out to 100 people. We're likely going to get a few of them to go ahead and do it anyways.
Nice. I like that.
You call out a buddy of mine, Saul Orwell, for his odd start times. So I've been to one of Saul's digital ones, one of his digital cookie events, because it was during the pandemic. I have sent him cookies from Minnesota. I should say my wife sent him cookies from Minnesota. I don't know how good they tasted by the time they arrived to him, but homemade cookies. But he's known for this. Did you inspire him to do the parties, or was it something that just happened alongside what you were doing?
No. Saul has been a very well-known host when I was getting started. I don't know if he still hosts too much, but at the time I was writing my book, probably mid to late 2010s, Saul was hosting. He was hosting these cookie things. He would fly into New York and host these dinners. He had a really cool idea, which was to host your events at a different non-standard time. So that could be a start time of 7:04 p.m. and it goes until 9:07 p.m. It just gets people to show up on time. What I found, though, was that when you host a 2-hour happy hour, it really compresses what I call the awkward time. The awkward time is that first, 15 to 30 minutes where, people don't want to show up right on time. They don't want to show up too late, but they don't want to show up too early. When you host a 2-hour event, it really compresses that time that people show up. One of the things that I hate, here in the South, is somebody says, oh, we're hosting a barbecue. And it's okay, what time is it? They're 2 o'clock. I'm 2 o'clock? When are you supposed to show up? Do you come right at 2? Do you come at 2:30? Do you come at 3:30? There's a story that I mentioned in the book where my friend Lindsay was having her birthday party, and she said it started on Friday night at 7 p.m., and so I call her at 6:45. I say, hey, I'm around the corner. Do you need a bag of ice or anything? And she says, you're around the corner? What do you do? She's I haven't even showered or gotten ready or anything. And I'm like, well, Lindsay, it's 6:45. Your party starts at 7. She's like, yeah, it starts at 7. Like, you're not going to show up until 8 at the early. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this, like people hedge their start times knowing that everybody would be late. And so with the 2-hour party, it just gets rid of all of that and really gets people to stay focused, which sounds silly when it's a social event. Why is that silly? But look, I know my audience and it's for busy people.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask if you're the on time or the, show up a little late. I think it sounds like you're the on time person. I am as well. I'm probably going to err even maybe getting on there early and then maybe just sit in the parking lot for a little bit until I'm like, okay, this is an appropriate amount of time for me to come on in now.
Because I have thoughts about this. I went to a meetup 2 nights ago and I got there within 5 minutes of the start time. I want to get there early so I can say hi to the host and so I can see the event grow around me. As someone who still has a little maybe social anxiety or something, even when it's not my own event, I don't like walking into a very busy room where I don't know a lot of people. I would prefer to be there where I can see others arrive and welcome them, kind of see it grow around me. It's a strategy that I have. I'm not sure if others do this, but I just feel more comfortable and confident when I get to be a part of it as instead of coming in from the outside. And I feel like I'm coming in from the outside when I show up an hour late.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I'm right there with you. I prefer to be on time or a little bit early. You've obviously
By the way, to the meetup that I went to,
yeah.
I hosted a Claude Code meetup, or I'm hosting one next Friday, but I went to a different one 2 nights ago. And because I'm such a nerd, I bring my own name tags and a clipboard that I always have in my backpack. And sure enough, this host didn't have name tags. He had read my book, but he didn't have those for some reason. Unbelievable. And I was like, hey, can I do name tags? And he was like, oh my God, would you please? And I basically took over his meetup. And like, I'm walking around, hey, what's up? How you doing? I'm writing name tags.
So I was going to ask, I was like, do you struggle getting out of host mode? Because I will say my trick, if you would, is that I've used when I go to meetups or things is, and I've heard this from somebody, I don't remember who, but it's like, pretend that you are the host. Anywhere you go where it's like, it is now your responsibility to make sure everybody's having a good time. That makes it a little bit easier to just like, I got to go and interject into this conversation and be a part of it. Do you struggle to get out of host mode then and just be a guest?
Oh my God. It is so hard. And it was really hard for me when I was first with my now wife, because when I would go to her events, it's just default for me, right? I'm like, all right, let's lead a couple icebreakers. And she's like, honey, you are here as an attendee. Like, try to just be an attendee. It's very hard for me, but it's a skill I'm still working on.
Yeah, that's good. You've hosted a lot of good parties. There has to be at least one example of a party that you're like, this one flopped. Like, what is that example of a story where the party did not go the way you planned?
Classic example, it was winter in New York City. I knew a lot of people were just going to be home and around. I sent out, it was a Tuesday night. I think I said, hey, why don't I just invite people over tomorrow night to just come, for folks that are in town who want to hang out. I didn't do any of my core group. I just sent out a mass email. I said, hey, I'll be hanging out. If you want to come hang out, I'll be at home. Swing by anytime from like 6 to 10 p.m. And, like 2 people showed up. And it's almost by default the 2 people that you know the least that will come to stuff like that. And it was very awkward and strained. And I wish I could say that I made the best of it, but it was just one of those situations where when it was over, I was like, oh my God, like I feel like I have been working to carry that conversation for the last how many hours. Not my best move.
That's funny. Speaking of potential party ideas that don't go over well, you told me, or at least in the book, I don't think you told me this, I read it in your book, you're against sitting as a general. You want standing parties. And then I want to come back to the poker night idea. And the reason why, because that's a sitting one. There's a bunch of guys. I'm coaching the 4th grade girls basketball team. And so it's like, there's a bunch of guys, the dads, and it's like, hey, I don't know them that well, but I could invite them over. But that would be definitely this idea of, it's like, they're not people I know well. It's like, hey, you guys want to come over and play some poker? Could be maybe good, could be awkward, but like, what is the problem with sitting? Why is standing better? And why no poker?
You can do poker, by the way. I would just do like a 30-minute happy hour or something before poker where
Okay.
people get the chance to stand and mix and mingle and you do some intros. I'm not opposed to a poker night. If you feel good about hosting poker and you want to have the appropriate number of people for that, I think you can still do it. The reason I don't like sitting is you get locked in and it's much harder to meet new people.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to remember, I wrote this book when I was in New York City, when I have a lot of acquaintances and very few friends. And I wanted to get 15 to 22 people. What I found was that when you sit down, well, now as a guest, I'm locked into the person to my left and right, and maybe the person that's across from me. When you sit down at a party, it's very hard to join existing conversations. And there's not a lot of movement and new conversations happening, which is really what I look for. I look for movement in the room and how many new people are chatting it up.
Yeah, no, that's good. I want to go back to another story that you shared in the book that I thought was fun. And I'm just going to say the quote, and then I'll let you tell the rest of the story. For the last time, we are a sushi supply store, not your friend. What happened?
I'm trying to remember about what this one was. I think this was about who to invite to your party.
I think so.
And that, generally speaking, you can't go wrong inviting people to a party. So party invitations are like a gift that you get to give to people. And so whether it's the barista at your local coffee shop, the business owner of the sushi restaurant that's down the block, you want to invite people. And of all the invites that I've given, I don't think I've really had negative responses from somebody saying, please stop inviting me to this free party where I get to meet these interesting people. Almost always, and by the way, the language I use for something like that is like, hey, I host these meetups about once a quarter for all these interesting people that I meet in town. The next time I do one, can I send you the info? That's the phrase I use. I say, can I send you the info? Not, do you want to come?
Sure.
And when you say, can I send you the info? That's very easy for people to say yes to.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. It's almost like that yes ladder, right? Where it's like, you can get them to say yes to at least something very non-committal. And then it's a little bit easier for them to say yes. But if they said no now, they don't even have the opportunity of saying yes later because they've already said no to even getting the info.
It's neat to think about the yes ladder as it applies to friendships. You know, I think I'm bad because I have the idea of a friendship funnel that, you know, you meet somebody in your town, in your neighborhood, maybe at like an event for your kid's school. You want to hang out with them again. You know, you think they're cool. But you're busy, they're busy. Also for guys, it's a little weird for us to be like, hey, do you want to be friends? So I think about that friendship funnel as these happy hours that you host is the first step of that funnel. And if you invite someone over to one of these happy hours and they play poker, perfect. You know the next phase of your funnel is to invite them to a poker night because you've had a chance to hang with them. You now know that they play poker. You feel okay having them over in a small group environment like that. I'm excited about your idea to host this poker night. And I wonder, what do you think about that idea of kind of the funnel where this quarterly happy hour casts a wide net and then you are scoping out who you'd invite to the poker night as those attendees sort of hang out?
I love it because, I mean, now the marketer in me is almost going to like bucketing them based on personas, right? And so it's like, okay, this group, these three people over here, they're also wild and crazy. And so if I want to go snowmobiling with them, which by the way, I got a little frostbite from going snowmobiling in -29, right? So like, but like I've got a group of friends and I could maybe see it's like, okay, this group, they'd be down for that. This group, down for poker, but they're not at all. This other group though, it's like, I'm also like very, very nerdy. And it's like, hey, if there was like some math speaker coming, it's like, this group would love to go to that. So now I'm almost like, to your point, the funnel, you're like, okay, great. Where can I like segment these different personas and say, these people would like to go to this next thing, but these ones wouldn't. And they would be, now you're conditioning them maybe to say no. Cause it's like, I just invited somebody who has no interest whatsoever in poker to a poker night. They're like, no. And now it's like, are they maybe more conditioned to saying no to other things I want to do in the future?
Interesting. Versus if it's a happy hour, almost everybody would say yes.
Yeah.
Not because they like to drink, but just because you set it up as like, hey, I want you to meet some interesting people. You're doing something really smart. I don't know if you know what you're doing, but that in hosting those activities, snowmobiling, poker, stuff like that, that is how you truly make good friendships. is by doing events and activities. You said this before. You want us to sweat together. That is really how you make these relationships. You have to think about my framework as the beginning.
Okay.
This is the like step one of your friendship funnel. It does need to feed down into something else, and yours is the natural next step.
Buddy of mine, Chris Carey, is working on writing a book about creating adult male friendships. He was on the podcast, sold his business, e-commerce founder, right? And similar, he's also got kids about my age, teenage kids, whatever, like my kids' age. But one of the things that he talks about is it's like, you know, and we've talked about, we've grabbed lunch, is there's usually one person who is the reacher outer, and I don't have a better word for it, but it's like there's the person who's always really good about asking, then the other person is like, yes, no, 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 yes, maybe, I don't know, yes, okay. It's like, but there's always that one person who's definitely the pursuer. Is that always going to be the case if you're the pursuer? Because I tell this to other people, it's like, I think you're just the pursuer, and I think you just have to recognize that you are, and other people aren't going to be, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that those people are not your friends. It's just that they're just not pursuers, and so like they're just waiting for you to say, "Do you want to go snowmobiling?"
That's so true. That you could, maybe it's one of the risks that you're worried about. That like when you start to host and then you don't get invited to some other people's things because you're waiting for them to invite you to something.
Sure.
My goal in writing this book is to say, look, you can be a host. Maybe you don't host a poker night like you host. Maybe you don't host snowmobiling. But you can at least host a happy hour. And especially hosts really appreciate getting invited to stuff.
That's a good point. I do want to get into the last little section, which is who is Nick Gray? On page 22 of your book, you say, I'm still waiting to introduce two people who fall in love and get married. Maybe you'll pull it off before I do, which is funny. Because I understand you ended up having a pretty interesting approach to finding your wife. Tell me about that.
I do have to note, though, I think I did introduce two people who did get married. My friend Peter Knox. I think he met his wife at one of my happy hours a long time ago in New York City. So
Very
I'm proud
cool
of that. Questionable if I was the one or if somebody else helped follow it up, but they definitely met for the first time at one of my events.
Regular hitch.
Yeah, super hitch. I met my now wife at Barton Springs Pool, which is like a community pool that we have here in Austin, Texas. Truly special, magical place. And I think I just went up and I started to chat with her. I invited her to an event that I was hosting, and then I invited her out on a date.
That's cool. What was the first date?
First date, we went for sushi. It was a very hot day here in Texas, and we rode bikes to go get sushi. And I think I knew at that moment that like she was down to ride bikes to go get sushi. I was like, oh, dream woman.
Oh, that's so cool when you find somebody that actually wants to do similar things with you. That's cool. You also are pretty particular about your pillows, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Tell me about your pillow. What is the best pillow and your experience in finding the best pillow?
This guy just sent me this thing. This guy, Peter Campbell, sent me a message that you can now go to Japan to get a custom-made pillow, which I loved. I've kind of custom-made my own pillows. I love Japanese buckwheat pillows.
Okay.
I find that they're cooler. They're not hot. And I really like how they fit and they adjust. They're very popular. I learned about them when I was traveling around Japan. But yeah, they're filled with buckwheat. They're very nice.
And you bring it with you when you travel, though?
Yes, I have my own special one that I travel with where I've made it a lot smaller. My pro tip is if you listen to this, you're like, ooh, Japanese buckwheat pillow. You can find them on Amazon for $30 or $40. I actually remove about half of the buckwheat from the pillow, so it's not like stuffed full. So that's the pro tip for the pillows.
I've never done it, but I'm tempted to because I do feel like I like a flatter pillow. I feel like my pillow is worn out and I'm just used to sleeping on my worn out pillow. And so when I go to a hotel and it's so fluffy, and I'm like, I can't breathe like this.
Oh, that's the move. Somebody said to me once, they said, strange pillows make for strange dreams. And in hotels, I used to travel a lot more than I do now. That was the one variable that I could control. Couldn't control the mattress or the blanket or anything, but I could control the pillow. So it was the easiest, smallest thing for me to pack.
That's good. All right, you asked this question before, or at least you said it's one of your favorite questions to ask. It's one I want to ask you anyways, which is, what are you nerding about right now? Like, this is the thing.
So there's a few projects that I'm working on. And I'll link these in the show notes. One is this museum donor database called www.patronview.com. And I've created this crazy database research tool for people that work in the nonprofit sector to find philanthropic donors and members. I'm really nerding out about that now. I love it. Second is this platform for collecting RSVPs for events like these happy hours. It's called Mixily, Mixily. It is 20 times better than Eventbrite or all the other ones. And I really like that one. I recently acquired that site. And the last thing is I've been helping people with personal websites. And if you're listening to this pod, you are a business owner, you are successful. I would say think about what shows up when people ask about you in ChatGPT and on Google. And if all that you have is your LinkedIn or a page that goes to like your company website, I think you need to have a personal website on a domain name that you own. Doesn't have to be complicated, and you can still help control some of those results. Think about it like proactive reputation management. And so I have a new project around that. That is, again, we'll link in the show notes, but it is www.personalwebsites.org.
That's all very interesting stuff. Let's start on the personal websites. Let's just give, what are your basics that you're like, you need to have this? The one that I modeled mine after that I really appreciated was JJ Bashara has one. And it's really simple. I think it's just like white background, some black text. It's just like, here's some links of the things that I've invested in and whatever. Very, very simple. And I like that. And so that's kind of what I've done for mine. For two
What is
reasons.
your site, by the way?
So it's not like what you were saying, like a custom domain. It's just Substack. It's Substack William Harris 101, but it's WMHARRIS 101.
Cool. 1011.
Just 101, as in like, the entry level
Nice.
Learning about William Harris.
Nice. I like that. I think yours looks good. It looks like I'm going to do a live review of it now. It is on Substack. It's got a white background. It has your name that's ranked right up. It has a beautiful about page. Your copy is really tight. I think you could have a bit more of a bio about yourself on there. So, and I would just look at like how you show up on search.
Sure.
So if I search for like William Harris Element homepage, it doesn't really show up. Things that I'm looking for is to have a good homepage, to have like a good about page, and then to have good search engine optimization. So I want to know that if I go to ChatGPT or Gemini and I ask about you as the CEO or founder, is it going to pull from this site that you have made? I think having your own domain name is not too hard. So if you did like williamharris101.com, you could probably get that name and park it on your Substack for free, probably. I think that adds a little bit of making it look more professional and probably helps with your rankings. But you have a lot of great content that's on your site. I think a lot of people might be intimidated by that because they look at this and there's like, oh my God, there's all these articles. How do I have time to write that? And so it doesn't have to be that complicated. You could just have a simple page that has an about page, that has a home page, that has a contact page. Just a little bit of info. I think about a personal website as like a digital honeypot where I want somebody to get into your world and spend time reading your stuff and seeing some of your things.
That's really good. And you hinted at the reason for this, but part of this is because ChatGPT and the other LLMs are going to start crawling this, and you want to start controlling that narrative a little bit more because it's like, hey, if you're a busy CEO already, you're like, why do I need a personal site for myself? And I'd be like, that's the main reason, right?
Yeah, one of the big reasons is as a business owner, you have employees, you have partners that are searching for you. Before they do business with you, they're going to see what you lead with online. And for many of us, we have a LinkedIn, we have an Instagram, and people find that. But I also find that a personal homepage, it's just a little way that even if it makes me look 10% better online, the ROI is just crazy on it. It's not expensive to set these up. Substack you can do for free. One of my favorite ones is just buy your domain name. I tell people to buy them on Cloudflare. Should be $10 a year. The reason I don't like GoDaddy or Namecheap is they try to sell you all this additional junk that you don't need. And then it's as easy as setting up a WordPress. You can use WordPress.com. It's $4 a month. There's simple stuff. With this new service I'm doing where I help people set up their sites, we do everything for you for $30 a month. But it doesn't have to be hard, and you can set it all up in 1 or 2 hours.
Yeah, $30 a month is not a lot. Nick, did you share what your website is? Your personal?
Oh, I'm very proud of mine. Mine is nickgraynews.com. nickgraynews.com.
That's very good. It has been really good talking to you, learning from you, learning about you. If people wanted to work with you, follow you, you left a few of those websites, but what's the best way for them to maybe follow you?
You should check me out. I'm on all the social media platforms at nickgraynews, N-E-W-S. And for some reason, if you are hesitant to buy my book, or maybe your budget doesn't allow, send me a note. And if you tell me William Harris Poker Night, then I will know that you actually listen to this, and I'll send you a free copy of my book if you're in the USA or Canada.
That's really cool. Well, I appreciate you again just sharing your wisdom with us here today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for listening. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for listening to the Up Arrow podcast with William Harris. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.